Hello, everyone. Welcome to the second part of the second day of our Congress. We continue to our schedule with another keynote speech. I would like to introduce Dr. Styliani Lefaki as the third keynote speaker. I will share her short bio with you firstly. Dr. Styliani Lefaki was born in Thessaloniki and is an architect with postgraduate studies in the field of protection, preservation, and restoration of cultural monuments. Her PhD research focused on glass constructions and transparency dealing with architectural heritage. From 1981 to 2014, she was the owner of the architectural design office Lefaki Zoidis together with George Zoidis. The office was engaged in public and private architectural projects, many of which have been distinguished and published. She has participated with distinctions in international and pan-Hellenic architectural competitions and has served as technical consultant to European organizations and municipal companies. Today, she is associate professor at the Department of Architectural History, Art History, Architectural Morphology, and Restoration of the School of Architecture and Engineering at the Polytechnical College of Aristotle University of Thessaloniki, Greece. Apart from her teaching activity at the School of Architecture of Aristotle University, she teaches at the following interdisciplinary postgraduate programs of the Aristotle University. She collaborates with universities and cultural institutes abroad as an invited speaker and researcher and organizes international workshops for architecture students and researchers in Greece and abroad. She also participates in international research projects dealing with cultural heritage, management, and environmental issues. She is the founder and the director of the Research Laboratory of Architectural History and Architectural Heritage Management, and currently director of the 4th Department, Architectural History, Art History, Architectural Morphology, and Restoration of the Aristotle University of Thessaloniki. She is a regular member of the Committee of the Center for Preservation of Attonite Heritage, which controls the building and restoration activities, technical and environmental interventions in Mount Athos. She also participates as member in committees for the judgment of architectural competitions. So, Dr. Lefaki, if you are ready, I would like to welcome you for your speech.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much for your kind invitation. Can I share the share screen? Yes, I think. Thank you for again for the invitation to the conference. I must say I feel very honored to be among you to discuss such hot and timely topics as the title of the conference indicates. Unfortunately, we are not speaking anymore about climate or environmental change, but about a severe environmental crisis. The events of the country where I come from underline the state of crisis through deadly storms and shocking wildfires, disasters that followed similar ones during the previous year, and which continue to highlight the aggressive behavior of humans towards the environment, to the point where the destruction of the environment seems to be a dominant human choice. What is the response to the crisis? Usually reactions such as regenerations, restorations, revitalization, redevelopment, and so on. However, this means that there is something to bring back, to strengthen or help to survive. In that way, reactions are an optimistic way of acting because they include the promise that things still exist, that hopes regaining life are still there. Of course, till one finds out what is that which will be regenerated. The issue to be discussed is how these reactions are planned and applied, a way that can easily turn these reactions to de-actions, a regeneration to a degeneration, how they confront environmental issues and how they deal with their complexity, where anthropogenic and natural dynamics cannot be distinguished, especially in the urban space. Urban space in the age of environmental crisis is also in danger. It threatens the quality of human life, as we know, and needs healing. And this healing tends to create an entire industry of reactions driven by funds and stakeholders, seeking for investors and measuring economical profits. A measuring that cannot reflect the complexity of the issue, because unfortunately, no appropriate measures have yet been found to measure the reality we live in, to measure relationships and intangible assets or conditions that sustain the life of a city. Most of the resources of urban life or survival can only be evaluated, not measured, like the importance or beauty of the monuments of the city, the works of art, the beauty of the city landscapes, its character, the importance of its memory, the creativity of arts and crafts, the power of its urban identity and collective memory, all the characteristics that give pleasure to life in the city, and so on. My critical approach to regenerations will be discussed in this presentation with some of the projects and examples I happen to know from my own architectural experience. They deal with the urban space of Thessaloniki, where I live, and this allows me to have some kind of insight. Apart from that, I think they are typical examples of the ways our society deals with urban space today, because they are conceived for a city that has been a crossroad of cultures and that today compiles its urban strategy with the laws of the European Union, reflecting thus European trends and tendencies. The reflection is more intense as the city doesn't belong to the leading countries of Europe, but mostly to the recipients of its politic as an interesting field of application and experimentations. And of course, in this frame, the city welcomes regenerations that herald a better future, or in another light, an innovative product for specific markets and investors. The regeneration projects I will refer to had an impact also outside the borders of the country, as in their majority were results of international architectural competitions. These projects are dealing with a city where Greeks, Romans, Ottomans, Jews, and Europeans have met, a crossroad of culture, as I already mentioned, whose character was respected by the designers of the city plan at the beginning of the 20th century, and the plan that was conceived after the big destructive fire of 1917, which destroyed important parts of the historic city. The plan was also a regeneration plan and was named after the French architect and urbanist Ernest Brard, who was leading the design team. The plan protected the historic center of the town, its monuments that survived, its port and its market, its climate and its special geomorphology, waters, streams, and so on, even the character of its inhabitants and their needs for recreation and culture. It respected the vital relationship between free green spaces and dense urban fabric that give life and meaning to one another. The free green spaces were organized mainly outside the city walls without disturbing the historical coherence of the center. And this free zone along the east walls of the city was very important for the plan. It was important because it had hosted also Hellenistic, Roman, and Jewish cemeteries, Ottoman military camps, settlements of the Middle Neolithic era. In short, it was considered as a zone of great archaeological and historical importance that mediated between the historical town and its new extension. With a bow of respect, let's say, to the geomorphological conditions and the natural relief, the plan created a natural link between the surrounding hills and the sea, It was a breathing lung for the town and its historical center. The green zone of Febrar was planned to host sport fields, cultural activities, and at the end of this axis, the University of the city. In other words, it was foreseen as a metropolitan park of culture and sciences, historically rooted in the area. This allowed the establishment and expansion of the Aristotle University, the location of the city's museum, important sport venues, but also the establishment of the International Fair Expo. The fair settled in this area in 1937 and gradually occupied an area of more than 100,000 square meters. It was founded as a bazaar, as a trade fair, and also as a park of exhibition pavilions. The pavilions, designed and constructed by important architects, became pilot examples of a functionalistic architecture adapted to the conditions of the place and the Greek reality. The space evolved into a unique open book of the Greek architectural avant-garde of the 20th century as a monumental ensemble of the modern movement. Although the space has been depreciated and abused, the building potential that remained could be reused and could be functional for the various activities of a metropolitan park that could be foreseen in this area. But the economic regeneration policy envisaged by a group of stakeholders had other visions. The regeneration plan that was officially submitted worried even ICOMOS. ICOMOS declared a state of alert for the so-called redevelopment of Thessaloniki's exhibition center. ICOMOS was convinced that this would degenerate an open museum of the 20th century architecture. It would destroy it. But this alert was easily overwhelmed by the general and trendy regeneration objectives. After all, despite ICOMOS, it was inevitable from the distance of an international standpoint to degrade basic elements of a historical space, to underline its genius logic and highlight generalities instead. The international competition, completed in 2021, will give to the city a sea of bioclimatic and environmentally sound constructions, which are going to overwhelm the historical envisioned green area. Bioclimatic giants are to be erected over natural streams and archaeological sites. Green areas will grow in their shadows as roads, entrance, and viewing spaces for the megabeasts. This is a diagram how the space of the convex park, as it is called, will be covered by high buildings. And the name of the project, this convex park, indicates unintentionally its intentions for the area as an X-park. Of course, the politically correct attitude requires the preservation of a few pavilions through taking, though without taking care that they will lose their meaning. They will lose the meaning when their surrounding space is altered. The architectural proposal, although of a high quality, do not keep up with the bearing capacity of the space. In such a context, even architectural wonders cannot be understood. The convex park promises a trivial management of any kind of resources, and is unfortunately a phenomenon not only of this specific competition, but of a spreading general tendency that is interested in ensuring the value of urban space as property through a real estate perception of the city environment. Specifications that speak of sustainable design strategies without the knowledge of the place and the particular environment can accompany any program and speculation with out-of-place rainwater use and photovoltaic bioclimatic high canopies for a regeneration that degenerate important factors of urban life. The loss of active green areas that will be caused by this complex park intervention is promised to be balanced in another part of the city, right in the heart of its historic center, in a space whose multiculturalism became internationally known as it was exhibited at the Venice Biennale di Architettura in 2021 with the title The Avenue of the Society of Nations. It is the central axis of the historical center of the city. It is known as the Aristotle axis, the most recognizable point of Thessaloniki. The interdisciplinary research proved, as Kalogirus mentions, that after the Great Fire of 1917, the city plan attempted to reorganize the urban palimpsest through the emblematic gesture of the Aristotle axis. This gesture incorporated modern and progressive elements, trying at the same time to express the local stigma of a city between East and West. The Boulevard of Aristotelus, thanks to its initial design as Avenue of the Society of Nations, is today the place par excellence, as Kalogiru mentions, the place par excellence that incorporates and unifies through its urban planning visible elements of the history of Thessaloniki with the presence of monuments from antiquity and more recent times. And indeed, the axis incorporates the Roman Agora, the Panagia Chalkeon, Bey Hammam, the most important monuments of the town. And we also with Neo-Byzantine elements of the Hebrar design. The regeneration of this axis was the subject of an international architectural competition, completed also in 2021. The competition was not interested about the factors and balances that made a unique environmental formation. Its specifications, as well as the way they were interpreted, are going to degenerate, unfortunately, what exists and is asking for regeneration. In this picture, you see part of the Aristotelus axis and the Aristotelus square with a spectacular view to the mountain Olympus on the horizon. The axis unites optically this view with another view towards the upper part of the city, towards the hills of the mountain Hortiatis. Thus, the axis contributes to the supervision and familiarity of the urban space, apart from the environmental benefits it offers. The proposals forget the character of the space and fragment the axis into rooms, negating not only its unity, but also the environmental importance of a natural breathing and ventilation axis of the city. The air breezes that cool this Mediterranean city move along this vertical axis. And they move because this axis connects the surrounding forest to the sea and give to the axis a very important cooling role for the area and for the city also. The extensive plantings that are proposed will disturb this role and the view and will never be able to replace the function of the green area that is going to be lost with the convex park I mentioned before. The proposed plantations bypass the original design of the central green strip and cancel the significance of the important architectural forts because they are hiding them. As these were not enough, creations of tanks and water jets next to the sea support another environmental waste with a fake excuse of serving cooling needs, where these are not required and where they create functional problems by depriving the precious free space for movement next to the sea. The so-called cooling is additionally blocked by extended concrete canopies foreseen for outdoor coffee shops that surrounds and invade the squares in an aggressive way towards the environment, its microclimate, and the urban fronts. The additional absence of absorptive floors excludes even the minimum possibility for the axis to function as a climate regulator for the wider central area, a role that was historically foreseen. And despite all this, the competition results announced today the environmental regeneration of Thessaloniki. Cases of other studies confirm adequately the ambiguity of urban regenerations. Such is the case of Thessaloniki subway project. Its constructions could be a unique opportunity for urban regeneration. Our award-winning study for the competition in 1993 was believing this, therefore was based on systematic research and interdisciplinary understanding of the city's timelessness and code of sustainability. The cultural legacy of the city, its archaeological treasure, had to come out of its cocoons to spread into the urban fabric and give to it the cohesion that was lost due to the jammed road arteries, the ones that divide the city like rivers and exclude popular areas from the sea. At the same time, the archaeological foundings and the existing monuments could accompany this gesture of unification and connect the scattered monuments. The project proved that this could be achieved thanks to the city's natural relief, which allowed the creation of intermediate spaces under the big axis over the train platforms at the level of the archaeological horizon. The plan was flexible towards surprises that are expected during archaeological excavations, and the flexibility occurred through the typology chosen for the station, a typology that allowed the shifting of the perforation of the archaeological horizon according to the findings. The protection and enhancement of Thessaloniki cultural legacy would be non-negotiable. It is a legacy recognized as a world cultural heritage, and the project was driven by the belief that cultural resources are in short supply, but they are irreplaceable and extremely precious. The study for the subway raised concerns that have not been seriously discussed since then. 26 years later, a new plan was applied without being presented publicly, and thus raised a storm of reactions, mainly because it did not respect the existing cultural and historical structure of the city. The dilemma, metro or monuments, had to be answered quickly under the pressure of time, and culture as a scarce common resource and asset was surprisingly not convincing the authorities. Cultural assets that support economic development were not clearly given by figures and not easy to understand. Monumental complexes that came to light and could be recognized as world cultural heritage were removed, destroying forever an important part of the city's memory and identity, together, of course, with many regeneration opportunities. Though the principles of the subway study were adapted by another regeneration plan in Thessaloniki, submitted for an architectural competition. It concerned the axis that connected the important monuments of Hagia Sophia and the Hierophyltu Church, and without useless paving and awkward urban equipment, the proposal tried in this linear rise of the axis from the sea towards the upper parts of the town to highlight the hidden historical stratigraphy of the city, as well as the urban fronts of the construction of the 30s that were still existing. It represented, respected the character of the existing urban tissue and exploited the elevation difference by adapting the urban surfaces to the natural relief. This gesture helped monuments and historic sites to meet the axis and declare their existence. So looking up to the north, the monuments and their surrounding area are perceived as a kind of perspective steps that gradually narrate the history of the city, integrated it into in today's life. So you can see different views of this project that try to integrate these areas of the monuments into the existing today's fabrics and gestures that try to regenerate this fabric through cultural assets. And also trying to exploit the high differences of the urban surface. This is, for example, the Ermou Street, a road that is perpendicular to the axis of Hagia Sophia, how it was in 1930, how it is today, and how it is proposed to be by this project. Permeable surfaces, underground tanks for rainwater, together with plantation, are supposed to take care of the special characteristic of the place and its microclimate. Geography and history provided solutions to another competition proposal for the regeneration of a historic square next to the harbor of Thessaloniki, the Eleftheria Square. The project introduced a radical meeting of history and geography with a deep and irregular fracture that brings to light the hidden history of the town. The reason was the coastal historic wall of the city, which still exists under the surface of today's square. The cavernous space of the rift would become the exhibition space to tell the story of the square, which refers to the Neo-Turkish movement announced in this place in 1908, and which is responsible for its name. Eleftheria means freedom. Hurriyet, I suppose, in Turkish, from the slogan of the Neo-Turkish movement. This story has also a lot to say about the important population of the city, the Jews, which was tortured by the Germans at this very place at the Second World War, during the Second World War. A square that could be not only place for rest and recreation, but also a cultural destination that could reconnect the urban tissue with the port to which it originally referred and the sea. Today, the regeneration of the urban square was considered not profitable enough, and the square became an open-air parking space that was to be extended underground, and it will be very different from what we are seeing in these images now. So it's very easy to continue to speak about similar regeneration examples, but all of them have something in common. They ask for simple gestures with respect to the environment and to the interaction of material and immaterial values that produced it, respect to its cultural resources that guarantee its sustainability. One needs to understand the space, its nature in a broader sense, the society which produced it, to understand exactly what a regeneration should regenerate in a specific space and time. Regeneration is justified by the existing, otherwise the term has no meaning and tends to be a degeneration. However, the way the existing environmental conditions are understood is still the big question, and practice proves a great confusion about it. Great confusion rules also the priorities and decisions that are rarely space and time specific, but follow general prescriptions instead. The confusion turns out to be disastrous because it often cancels what has been created over time, over centuries, the spirit of the place, and hazed through today's environmental prism of consideration. Values and relationships can be measured with difficulty, while implied technocratic analysis inevitably leads to a trivial technological reality and indifferent impersonal urban space with a sad doses of illusions. Smart cities with electronic application and skateboards are a temporary environmental trap, let's say, that holds our cities back from becoming wise cities. And wise cities are those that structure their future by recognizing their past and know how to handle space and time with sensitivity and empathy. They do not sleep on glossy floors and bioclimatic surfaces designed by ambitious regenerators. They don't spend energy to build, just to enforce a fake economy and to prove how competitive their environmental industries. The cost of this industry of extensive regeneration projects and bioclimatic constructions out of place must be revised. Signatures of famous designers can camouflage tons of steel and concrete under green wings of planted roofs and bioclimatic glass facades. The participation of the architect for creating architectural sensations is never enough to contribute to a regeneration towards the sustainability of the city. Regenerations don't need architectural wonders, but knowledge, understanding, sensibility, and wisdom. They require knowledge of the place and its resources, sensitivity, and love for the environment and life. Otherwise, they can easily turn to be degenerations. And thank you for your attention. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Lefaki, for your presentation. It was informative and so captivating. So if there's any comments or questions, please let us know. You can leave them in the Q&A bar and I will be directing them to our guest. Yes, we have one question. We have a question from Asubeshkan. The new park is named as X Park. I hope it will not be like a human being passing away. So comparing these two periods of competition winners, what's the most important issue and or context and or concept which has to be kept for having the success in city regeneration to avoid city degeneration?
Thank you for the question. It must be the plans, the programming of these architectural competitions and regeneration projects. They don't take care of the cultural resources of a city, and cultural resources are really valuable. They are irreplaceable. And they cannot, and also, and apart from that, they don't take into account the bearing capacity of the place that has also to be, that is also connected to these cultural assets. And not only. And this is the problem that all these plans are based on economical evaluation and futures and not on evaluations. They are the method that usually leads to these has to be revised. For example, you cannot measure the importance of the Acropolis, let's say, that we have in Greece. So these projects are aiming to economical success, let's say, a success that is for certain stakeholders, and they don't take care of what is happening in a town. They don't take care of its environment in the wider sense. I don't know if I answered the question. I hope.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your question. We have another questions. The first one is from Tanya Urso-Marzo. Thank you for your fantastic presentation. You raise many important and timely points. In your view, how do we architects and the public interest investors of such important cultural projects in understanding and supporting their environmental and cultural importance, or to reconcile such valuable things with economic interest?
I must say the economic interest also has to be revised, and it's a trap. The economy sees the economy as it is presented by the stakeholders, by the investors, sees one part of the problem. It's an economy that we can say it's a fake economy, but because it has economical benefits for a certain part of the population, let's say, and destroys the economy of other parts of the population. This is something that happens in urban space where the contradictions are very intense. So one has to consider really to know where to intervene, where to project, and what it is about. One has to know the existing situation in a disciplinary way, or with all its aspects, the aspects of from the cultural, the social, the environmental aspects all together that can lead to the result.
Okay. Thank you for the answer. We have another question from Önce Özal. Thank you very much for this very impressive presentation. What do you think about the relationship between arranging competitions and the concept of regeneration? Do you think competitions are the best way to think about regeneration projects? Thank you.
I think that the competitions must take the programming of the competition. It's very important. It's also important, also the designing the project, the end project. It's very important because it states the problem, the real problem, and all the factors of a problem. So if the programming forgets about certain aspects and cultural assets and so on, then it leads to results that could turn a regeneration to a degeneration.
Thank you for the answer. I guess we don't have more questions. Asu Beşiken says, thank you very much for your answer, by the way. I need to tell this too. So if there is no more questions, we are already coming to end of our time. Dr. Lefaki, thank you for your presentation. It was so fruitful.